Welcome back, everyone. It is time to review Terrifier 2. Alright, well, whatever. Now that we've moved past that, I got the copy here, Terrifier 2. I got this one on DVD. This, like the first one, just sort of has this nostalgic aesthetic to it that it just really didn't need, I think, a higher format. I'm sure the movie looks fine, but I think the sort of older format, I think DVD just sort of helps give it that sort of grainy look that I think complements the vibe and tone and premise for the movie. And this movie was interesting for a lot of reasons, but one, it picked up kind of where the first one left off, is we see Art the Clown has indeed survived. And we start getting a little bit more information about him. He's, of course, breaking out of the coroner's office space. He's going on to the city. The cops passing by, pay no mind to him, walking around just as a clown, carrying a body bag or trash bag, whatever it is he has. And, it sort of goes to the goofy, wild side of these movies where he's washing the suit, the costume, whatever you call it. And we get this new character that's dressed similar to him, but what's interesting is when I watched it, and in subtitles, this little girl is listed as Demon Girl that he sees, but it shows someone else at the laundromat. No one else can see her but Art the Clown. And so saying Demon Girl, to me, I interpret that as this entity, this supernatural force, which I think gives a new element to this franchise. He's not just some guy. He's obviously been brought back to life. So I think, to me, I see this as entity has revived him. He didn't just naturally survive everything he's gone through. And so seeing supernatural forces at play here, it gives it sort of this new element to the movie and to the franchise as a whole. And if you don't watch this movie with subtitles, you'll never know it says Demon Girl because no one else calls her by that. Obviously, Art the Clown, he doesn't speak, neither does this little girl. They both use, it's almost like mime, they use hand signals and mimicry for body language for their actions. And so you don't actually see her speak or him speak. The subtitles lists her as a demon, so that obviously has a huge part to play, I think, in the overall story of Art the Clown. And so in this movie, it's a drastic turn from the last one. In the last one, we had two main characters. They both died. We got a new character. She barely survived. And now we got a new set. We got a family. We got this mom. We have Sienna. We have her brother Jonathan. So we have three new characters. Sienna's got her friends. Jonathan, I guess, has his friends. He doesn't have any named friends on screen in the movie, but he has people he talks to. So going from the first movie where there are essentially 2 to 3 characters that we get to know besides a couple of workers around the place, we get a new set of characters for this one. So the tone is already a little different because it feels like the world is a little bit bigger and there's more to it. There's more to the Terrifier universe. And I think that sort of helps build the aesthetic with it. And for a long while, we get the opening of this movie with Art the Clown, but when it skips to Sienna and then we see her family, they sort of take a while to progress to what Art the Clown is up to. So we get to really invest in these new characters, which I think it also helps, but it also gives us a sense of dread because we're just expecting these characters to die because that's what happened in the last one. And so as Sienna gets this dream, we have this sort of wacky scene with this girl singing a song for Art the Clown, and these adults dressed as kids waiting to get candy, and he just murders all of them. And so she's seeing this dream, but we don't know if this is happening somewhere for real, if this is her, some suppressed memory, if this is her seeing through Art's eyes. This isn't necessarily explained, not directly, but it is sort of referenced later, and we'll get to that with, I think, which plays into a new theory of mine. So after she sees a sequence, obviously her costume in the drawings that her dad left for her is getting burned, so she needs a new costume and ends up at this sort of Halloween shop. And we see Art the Clown there. And this is where we get sort of those classic scenes that we've seen on the internet. People who don't watch these movies, they've seen the picture of him with the sunglasses. This is where that scene takes place. And he's very much stalking her, but we don't see him really do anything except for the poor cashier. And so this sort of, the violence happens in small doses in this movie. It had a strong opening, but the violence is in small doses. And it takes time to develop the characters, our main characters, and it takes time to not exactly develop Art the Clown, but we get a buildup of him attacking people that are on screen for really the first time when they meet him, towards him facing off with the main characters. And so there was a buildup and there was a story building toward this climax for the movie, and I really thought that part was interesting because it was so different from the first one, and I'm glad this movie wasn't a copy. The aesthetic and the feels and the violence and the gore, that is all similar to the first one, but as far as the overall script is concerned, it feels much different. This is also an hour longer than the first film. The first film was an hour and 20 minutes. This one is it's actually 2 hours and 20 minutes. So yeah, so it is an hour longer, and it feels a little long at times, but at the end of the movie, it almost feels worth the runtime, if that makes sense. So a horror movie, it's sort of random when a movie's that long. In retrospect, 220 minutes isn't all that long. It's just in a slasher, sometimes it can. But ultimately, I think this one, it paid off waiting because of all the stories we got. And so, really to sort of move on, Art the Clown is now terrorizing people. We see he's terrorizing one of Santa's friends at school, and or one of her friends from school ends up getting terrorized in her home, and this is, I would say, the single most brutal kill in the franchise, even more so than the rest of the kills from the rest of this movie. It was absolutely insane to watch. You're just sort of sitting there not really knowing what to think. You're just wondering what is even happening on the screen right now. And so, from someone who wants violence and gore, you get violence and gore with Art the Clown. And I think this is one of those scenes that is used as an example for how Art the Clown is making a name for himself in the horror genre. I'm seeing a lot of others who make content on YouTube, other fans online, other comments on these various sites. There's a lot of people speculating as to whether or not Art the Clown is up there with the greats like Freddy Krueger and Michael Myers and Leatherface. There are some people that have they feel Art the Clown is up there with the rest of them, and it's a high bar. It is very uncommon for a modern movie to get compared to the greats like that, and to see Art the Clown sort of at least having some traction with his reception going that way, I think it's just very interesting because of the level of attention and intensity that these movies have. And so if it wasn't all that violent, fans who appreciate these kinds of movies wouldn't have much to give him such praise up here for. And so I think risks were taken to make this movie and this franchise, but I think it so far has paid off. And last I checked, for Terrifier 3, which I'll end up seeing very soon, the last I checked, the not critic score, the audience score on Rotten Tomatoes was at, I believe it was over 90%. So the audience are loving Terrifier movies, especially the new one, it sounds like. And so to see Terrifier go up against Joker is just sort of insane to think about. So I'm very excited to see where this franchise goes, and I'm excited to see the third and review it. But as we sort of get back to this one, because it's one of my more favorite recent franchises, like I said, after he kills her friend, the violence keeps getting more intense. The kill isn't as bloody as this one, but the rest is still pretty violent. And so we sort of have a few characters. Jonathan ends up being taken after his mother is murdered. So the characters are starting to thin out by now. We have, the coroner, then we have the guy at the laundromat, we have her friend, we have the cashier at the store, and so the bodies are starting to pile up. And that's the thing with this, is it's not necessarily a slow burn, but it's a slow build, because once it starts, it keeps going. That's how this movie can be explained. And I think it's a positive. I liked that it kept building and building and building. And so as Sienna goes out with her friends on Halloween night to party, she ends up realizing Jonathan's been taken, and she's going to go help him. She has one of her friends with her boyfriend's with them, and so the three of them really travel to this fun house, basically, this abandoned fun house, to find Jonathan. And we know that Demon Girl is there, and it's just very interesting because the subtitles lists when it's her versus someone else, and so that part's very interesting to pay attention to. But as they get there, Sienna goes in alone. She goes in looking for him, and Art the Clown ends up killing the friend's boyfriend. And so, of course, the friend runs. She runs inside the fun house, and when he catches up to her, that is a pretty disgusting kill. It was hard to watch because it was just kind of gross. Everyone has their tolerance. My tolerance, grossness over the top blood, is going to affect me more. So if it's super bloody and bone cracking, okay. If it's gross, I don't like it. I don't like it. So at this point in the movie, after the friend is killed, Sienna and Jonathan are practically the only characters left for they're the only ones left in this franchise, basically. And so they get their showdown with Art the Clown, and it's going back and forth. This is interesting because they end up having this weapon. They end up jabbing basically into Art the Clown's head, and then he's attacking Sienna. He's attacking Jonathan. Then they get to jump on Art the Clown, and so it's sort of going back and forth until she ends up using the sword she has, and Art the Clown essentially kills her. Well, it's what we're made to believe. As she falls down to this lower level, there's this fiery pit. It looks like the gate to hell. I'm just watching the movies that I've seen enough movies where it looks like a gate to hell. I don't know if it was supposed to be. That's what it looked like to me. And as she falls through this pit to hell, as I'm going to call it, she ends up in this tank in this, she's now in the same location that she's on her dream with those murdered children. And so, as Jonathan has referenced at this point earlier in the film, that their dad wrote sketches of the events that ended up happening during the first and second Terrifier. So we're immediately led to speculate that maybe their father is Art the Clown himself, and if a demon is involved, perhaps he's possessed, he doesn't know who he is, he doesn't know what's going on, he's just the vessel being used by the demon. And since that's not confirmed to be true or not, I think it is left for speculation, which is the more fascinating part of this franchise. And so, as Sienna sees all this around her, she ends up surviving, and the sword glows. She gets out of this pit, whatever you want to call it, and she attacks Art the Clown again, this time cutting off his freaking head. And so we think that's the end for Art the Clown. And as she and Jonathan have their final reunion for the movie, we see the demon girl. She ends up picking up Art's head and leaves with it. So we're going to assume she's the reason he survives. And so it's just really interesting to see all these mysteries floating around, giving us something to speculate for. I think it's not comparable to the Scream movies, but when you go into Scream from movie to movie, you always, part of the fun with a Scream movie is speculating who Ghostface is going to be. And so I think now that's the thing with Terrifier, is speculating who is going to survive his rampage, because we never know when the demon girl will step in, what he can survive, when he's slowed down, what actually hurts him, what really doesn't. And so the mystery side to it gives us something to speculate, and that is It's more fun. It gets you more involved and committed for a franchise such as this. So I thought that was positive for the movie. And I unfortunately I just haven't gone back to the first one to watch for an end credit scene, but apparently there is one. The second one had one too, where I believe her name is Vicky, the girl that ended up disfigured. She obviously, after killing the reporter, she is arrested, and I forget if she's taken to the hospital or psych ward or the jail. But we get this end credit scene where assuming doctors, I'm going to assume it's a psych ward. They see her there, and we get a couple scenes of what she's doing, and she ends up using her own blood, painting these quotes on the wall, and it looks like she's giving birth, and it's real disgusting, and you don't know what's going to happen because you don't want a baby involved with this, but what she ends up giving birth to is the head of Art the Clown. And so, because she's acting completely insane, which is different than when, well, before she was disfigured, so I think as fans, we could also speculate that perhaps the Demon Girl is using her too, somehow, some way, some form. All we know is she's giving rebirth to Art the Clown, and now Art is back to terrorize wherever he wants now. So the fact that she's involved somehow is interesting. She has been included in some posters for the marketing for Terrifier 3, so I'm assuming she's going to have more of a role in this one than at least the second one. And so, between her, Terrifier, and Demon Girl, we now have 3 characters involved that could terrorize, possibly at the same time in 3 different locations. So it's pretty crazy. The franchise is more exciting. There are some scenes that are hard to watch, but overall, the violence and the gore, the kills, and the creativity with the twisted side to Art the Clown and the twisted supernatural elements thrown in there, I think all those ingredients make this franchise interesting. It's not the greatest thing in the world because there's some messed up stuff in here, but as a horror fan, it is fun to see. I'm excited to see where the third goes. Thank you guys for sticking with me for this review. I can't wait to review the third once I see it. I will see you all next time.